So I mean, that I think has been a huge success.
Cool. And how did the organization or the school respond to it? So you talked about the students. What about the staff members? How they kind of?
I don't know. I don't know that I would have the best. I mean, I can only speak from kind of one-on-ones I've had with other people who really enjoyed their project week, leading their trips. I haven't heard much critical feedback. I think people were really felt like they were organized well. They had good supports. Good emergency response systems. We've had really good risk assessment done this year that has mitigated a lot of risk that could have otherwise been there. So, from verbal accounts, it seems like it's been, most people had very positive experiences.
All right. What about something that's kind of not gone so well at the organizational level, at the school level? Can you think of something, an example of that?
Well, I mean, I think the one I gave earlier really didn't go so well. The how do we solve the problem of, so I mean, we had a CIS accreditation team coming on last term, right? And we didn't get accreditation, and one of the stipulations was that we needed more, adult supervision at night for safety of the students. And so again, I think one of the things that didn't go well was trying to use the already existing and already quite taxed manpower to try to meet that need prematurely on people who are already quite tired and overutilized. And so, or maybe misutilized. I don't even want to say overutilized, because I think we have some people who could be utilized better if we were using them in their areas of interest more. I think we haven't yet learned how to implement some of these requested changes in a way that will actually meet the manpower that we have and the woman power and the resources that we have to meet these stipulations to try to keep evolving and improving as a school. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's been a few other things. Like there was a huge alcohol bust where like 40 plus small bottles of vodka were found scattered around the woods around campus. And, there's been our response of how we choose to respond to the student population around this. And I think we've done some things well with that, and some things that could still be done better, of having a broader campus conversation around substances and why it is important to look at this from a community perspective. Because oftentimes it turns into a philosophical debate of, like, again, control and students feeling micromanaged and not really understanding and diving deeper into why this might be a stipulation as a part of the UWC movement, in terms of, if we did allow alcohol, which we couldn't even given our legal context that we're in, it's not legal, but if we could, would we? And why would we? And what do we actually believe about how that would impact our ability to engage with each other as peers and fellow students? And I don't believe that we fully have had time and space to do that, because there just hasn't been time and space. So it's been a bit of a crackdown in attempts at having that conversation, but not enough time or perhaps the right context to thoroughly do it. But we're doing some things really well with that too. So I wouldn't say that's a failure. That's kind of a mixed bag of learning some things and doing some things really well. With now the students are trying to hold it and at the student government level run surveys to understand why people are drinking, what they're using it as an outlet for, and we're taking baby steps from there.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. How did the staff respond to that? Like, are they still kind of on the fence, or is it torn?
I think the staff are a bit mixed. Mm-hmm. I think the majority of staff feel like, yes, we have to abide by the laws of our country and alcohol should not be allowed. And I think there are other staff who are like, look, they're teenagers. Like, you can't expect us to be able to police them 24/7. And there's a way in which, if we try to say that they're not going to have sex, they're not going to drink alcohol, they're never going to smoke, like, we're turning a blind eye to something that is going to happen. And so, I mean, there are different levels of perspective and opinion about the realistic nature of some of these rules, and how much we can expect students to abide by them. And then there's also some students push back on faculty. Well, you as faculty get to drink, and we see you smoking. And, then there's a bit of like, and they're like, what about UWC movement then? And yes, we know it's legal, but then what about you trying to live in community? And what are your, and it does become, and faculty are like, next question. Decline to answer. And the reality is that faculty too sometimes are using these substances as coping mechanisms and as a stress reliever. And the students call us on it when we're trying to call them on it. And it's kind of like, people get kind of stuck in okay, so moving on from this
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
In a way that's quite funny and quite human as well. But yeah, I think you probably get it from your context.
Yeah, because I do, just so you know, I live on campus in the residences. So yeah, so I kind of, know exactly what you're talking about with the, you do something, the students, they're like, well, you can do it. Yeah.
Yes. And you're at UWC Diligent,
yes,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm, in Armenia.
Okay. Wonderful. Yes. So I was able to meet your counselor, he's a fantastic human being. He came to the counselors conference, and, that was a really good time for the counselors to get together in Adriatic and have a great, coming together of minds of some of these challenges that we all face. And it's just such a different vantage point to be a counselor, in these schools when you're really one of 30 or 40 faculty, and what you're doing is so different than teaching, that it's a curious position to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, cause you don't see the same side.
Right, exactly. Not at all. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so just the last couple of questions. How long do you plan on staying you're in Mahindra, right? I'm just making sure I'm thinking
yes.
Yes, Mahindra. Okay. Yeah. How long do you plan on staying there?
Yeah, I mean, I had initially been touch and go as to whether even to stay on for next year, given that this year's been quite tumultuous. And, not always for me the most supportive place to be. So, initially it was a very hard decision to decide to stay on for next year because I had a 2-year contract with an option to kind of opt out 1 year in because of the role was changing a bit, in terms of, and honestly, I don't feel like we accomplished much of what I came in to accomplish this year, which was the reason I was going to leave if there wasn't support for it. But I'm deciding to stay on 1 more year. I don't know if I will survive much beyond 1 more year, to be fair. Here, just unless some major things change, and I don't currently foresee them changing for next year. Okay. So I think for me, I've made a lot of good mistakes this year to feel like I could do some things better next year for the students, and I would love to be as strong in this role as I can be next year and just feel that own personal kind of fulfillment of really trying to do this work well. And then there's other things and hopes and dreams of being a part of this movement and kind of supporting bigger shifts that I have had to just kind of let go of. And I don't know that I'm willing to linger much longer beyond an extra year for the sake of those things that I would rather do somewhere else where there's more movement in that direction.
Would you want to do it at another UWC, or would you want to look at maybe just another school, or what are you thinking about when you think about that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't actually know. Right now I'm very detached, and this is the first UWC I've worked at. It's been a really beautiful experience in many ways. And, these students are phenomenal from my perspective, and what we're trying to do here is great. And there's some things that I ideologically don't know that I'm, in agreement with where the movement is and where it's going, or where we try to be, but we have too many maybe conflicting, or competing things for our time. And there's only so much that can happen in a realistic day or month or year. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I mean, I really appreciate the movement, and it would really depend on if there was an openness at another school that did feel like it was the right place to do the work that I want to do and not feel like I'm kind of just doing triage cleanup work without actually also being able to influence the system in a positive way that I would hope would be for student wellness and long-term resiliency.
Can you give me an example of something that you wanted to do that you haven't been able to?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to kind of implement a more robust mindfulness and leadership and even maybe yoga-based curriculum. I'm also a Ayurvedic practitioner and yoga practitioner and teacher as well. And it was just too hard to do on my own, and there being no other support. And, it not being made a formal thing, that the students, it's very hard to get them to have buy-in in things that they don't get any credit for when they're already strapped for time and that there's no formal supports for, and part of that was just not being here last year to implement it into a CAS system properly. But also when there's no other talk of mindfulness, and if I'm kind of one lone voice of the value of meditation and breath and calming down and social and emotional learning and really coming to understand the mind and building leadership skills through cooperativeness and nonviolent communication and building each other up, like if not many other people are well versed or well trained in that or living that way or teaching it as well, it's a little bit hard to create enough momentum to get something off the ground on my own. And maybe I will have more